It is 3 a.m. in New York, 8 in The Hague, and 4 on a Tuesday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young. This is Arirang, Korea's only global network. A newly surfaced report shows that the United States concluded years ago that women were systematically forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during World War II. Now, that was the determination made back in 2007 by a working group tasked with going through classified U.S. records to identify war crimes related to the Nazis and Imperial Japan. Now, after combing through more than 8.5 million pages of documents, they concluded that the Japanese military had contracted private vendors to set up so-called comfort stations for its troops dating back to as early as 1932. The group sent their findings on to the U.S. Congress. Now, over in The Hague, President Park Geun-hye addressed world leaders gathered for the opening ceremony of the Nuclear Security Summit. Focusing on nuclear security, President Park pointed to North Korea, saying that denuclearization should first start on the Korean peninsula. Our presidential office correspondent Choi-sun is traveling with the president, and she followed this report from the Netherlands.
President Park Geun-hye has laid out a systematic plan to enhance nuclear security worldwide. In a 4-point proposal made during her opening remarks at the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague, the president said the international community should take an integrated approach towards nuclear security, disarmament, and non-proliferation. She referred to Washington and Moscow's initiative that turned nuclear arms materials into nuclear fuel, saying it was a prime example of turning swords into plowshares. The Korean leader then said there's a need for regional cooperation on nuclear security, such as in Northeast Asia, where 23% of the world's nuclear power plants are in operation. President Park also talked about the need for countries to share technology and experiences to level the playing field. Lastly, she said more measures are required to prevent cyber terror attacks on nuclear power plants. President Park also made a point of commending international efforts to strengthen nuclear security. She mentioned countries voluntarily allowing the International Atomic Energy Agency to inspect their nuclear material protection systems. She also voiced concern about North Korea's nuclear materials getting into the hands of terrorist organizations and nuclear safety.
지금 북한의 영변에는 많은 핵시설이 집중되어 있는데 한 건물에서 화재가 나면 체르노빌보다 더 심각한 핵 재앙으로 이어질 것이라는 지적입니다.
The South Korean leader used the opportunity to cast light on the dangers of North Korea's nuclear development program. She said a nuclear-free Korean peninsula should be the first step towards a world without nuclear arms. Choi-sun, Arirang News, The Hague.
And staying in The Hague, North Korea's nuclear program was also high on the agenda of summit talks between the leaders of the United States and China on Monday. President Barack Obama and President Xi Jinping reaffirmed that North Korea should not be in possession of nuclear weapons and promised to continue close consultations on that very matter. Now, while they saw eye to eye on the overall North Korean nuclear issue, the same cannot be said about their stances on resuming the six-party talks. Beijing wants to reopen discussions sooner rather than later, while Washington wants Pyongyang to take concrete steps towards denuclearization first before talks can resume. It's been 6 years now since the last round of six-party talks on North Korea's nuclear program was held, and North Korea says the blame for the delay falls on the shoulders of the United States. Heaping pointed words on Washington, the deputy chief of Pyongyang's UN mission said the U.S. is keeping the two Koreas from improving relations. Here's our UDN with more.
North Korea has pointed the finger squarely at the United States for the failed resumption of the six-party talks, which are aimed at ending the North's nuclear weapons program. Speaking at a news conference at the United Nations on Monday, Pyongyang's deputy UN ambassador Ri Dong-il said the U.S. was using his country's nuclear program as a political bargaining chip.
As long as the U.S. is continuing nuclear blackmails against the DPRK, United States should clearly know the fact that additional measures will continue to be taken by the DPRK in order to demonstrate the power of the self-defensive nuclear deterrent.
He said the U.S. was to blame for the stalled six-party talks, citing their refusal to meet without preconditions. The six-party talks, which involve China, Japan, Russia, the U.S., and the two Koreas, are aimed at disarming North Korea of its nuclear weapons. The talks have been stalled since late 2008. China has been making a push in recent months to restart the talks, but the U.S. remains insistent that North Korea must first dismantle its nuclear program before talks can continue. Lee also said the United States' refusal to halt annual joint military drills with South Korea are undermining prospects for improved relations between the two Koreas. The latest criticisms follow an accusation on March 14th that the U.S. is setting up a human rights conspiracy against North Korea. That came in response to a U.S. human rights report that called out the North for numerous violations. 유리안, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now, Wednesday, that is tomorrow here in Korea, marks the 4th anniversary of North Korea's torpedo attack on the South Korean warship Cheonan, which killed 46 South Korean sailors. Seoul swiftly imposed tough sanctions on the North that proved to have quite an impact on the North Korean economy. But as our Kim Han-gil reports, some say it's time they were lifted.
46 brave souls were lost when the South Korean warship Cheonan was sunk by a torpedo attack blamed on North Korea in 2010. 2 months later, economic sanctions called the 524 measures were placed against the North that prevent any and all exchanges between the two Koreas.
It's not just general trade. It's all processing materials that are banned from in and out of North Korea.
The measures had a substantial effect. All cross-border trading came to an abrupt end, with the exception of factory operations at the Kaesong Industrial Complex. The amount of exports to South Korea dropped from an average of $41 million a month before the sanctions were put in place to $3.7 million a month afterward. To fill the gap, Pyongyang began relying more heavily on China and selling off more of its natural resources. While that has mitigated the effects of the 524 measures, it's had other effects on the North Korean economy.
Natural resources are key strategic materials for the North, so it's worth noting that former leader Kim Jong-il banned exports of these products.
Citing improving inter-Korean relations, some in the South are now calling for the 524 measures to be lifted. But the South Korea government says that won't happen until Pyongyang takes responsibility for past actions.
Regarding the Cheonan issue, North Korea says they weren't involved. Pyongyang needs to take responsibility for Cheonan and apologize for its actions.
So added that North Korea also needs to stop making threats and carrying out provocations if it wants the 524 measures to be lifted. Kim Han-gil, Arirang News.
And on to the missing Malaysian Airlines plane. After more than 2 weeks of hoping and praying, all hope was dashed on Monday. The relatives of the missing passengers of the Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 have been told that the ill-fated flight came down somewhere in the remote southern Indian Ocean with no chance anyone survived. On top of that, search operations have been suspended for the rest of the day due to poor weather conditions in the search area. For more on this story, here's our Shin Se-min.
17 days of pent-up despair and rage exploded in a Beijing hotel conference room on Monday as relatives of the Chinese passengers on board Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 were given the news many feared, but they didn't want to believe.
I want to tell the journalists, the information they just sent, it is not true.
In a damning statement given to the media, the families accused Malaysia Airlines and the Malaysian government and military of being, quote, the real executioners who killed the missing jet passengers. They said the shameless behavior misguided and delayed rescue actions, wasting a large quantity of human resources and materials and lost valuable time for the rescue effort. The angry reaction came after Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak told the world's media Monday that the plane is assumed to have crashed more than 2,000 kilometers west of Australian city of Perth with no chance anyone survived.
This is a remote location far from any possible landing sites. It is therefore with deep sadness and regret that I must inform you that according to this new data, flight MH370 ended in the southern Indian Ocean.
The announcement was based on fresh satellite analysis from Britain, which had employed a type of analysis never before used in an investigation of this sort. Australia says true objects have been spotted and that a naval vessel hoped to recover them soon. The latest in a line of leads stemmed from a French satellite image that showed possible debris in the remote sea southwest of Australia. Despite an extensive multinational search for the missing plane, no wreckage has been retrieved. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Back here in this country, we're just one day away now from the official launch of a new political coalition here in Korea. The New Politics Alliance for Democracy, which will hold an inauguration ceremony Wednesday, was the main topic of conversation at a policy debate forum. This at the National Assembly this morning with the question, what is New Politics? Our political correspondent Ji Myung-kil has more.
The coalition party that will be led by Democratic Party leader Kim Han-gil and independent lawmaker Ahn Cheol-soo aims to bring about an era of new politics. But what is new politics? That was the very title of a policy debate forum at the National Assembly on Tuesday. Supporters of the newly formed New Politics Alliance for Democracy, or NPAD, joined with academics and lawmakers to discuss the future of the political landscape in Korea. A political analyst said any form of new politics must focus on narrowing gaps in society.
New politics should be able to solve the socioeconomic problems that society currently faces. Old politics has failed to do that. We'll have to wait and see whether the Grand Coalition will be able to do the job.
Experts said a priority should also be placed on building a fair welfare state that helps the people. Professor Moon Jin-young from Seogang University asked that the government make greater efforts to ensure there are no blind spots in the current welfare system.
Although the Korean government has worked on its welfare system, it is regrettable that incidents occur like the one we saw recently, where families are committing suicide due to financial hardships. We need to formulate comprehensive measures to help low-income families.
Pundits urge the government to keep President Park Geun-hye's welfare promises that include providing a monthly allowance of some $185 to all senior citizens over the age of 65. The participants also voiced a need to prepare for a peaceful unification of the two Koreas, while also keeping an emphasis on national security and denuclearizing the North. Ji Myung-kil, Arirang News.
Now to the highly debated issue of telemedicine here in Korea. The nation's cabinet passed the revised Telemedicine Act for doctors and patients earlier this Tuesday, despite pushback from the medical community. Telemedicine is clinical care that uses communication technology such as smartphones and advanced media to remove the need for face-to-face consultations between doctors and patients. While the government says the change will improve welfare services and lower medical costs, some doctors say it will diminish their quality of care, and thousands went on strike earlier this month in protest. The bill now goes to the National Assembly for a vote, and the government hopes the act will go into effect in 2015. Meanwhile, Korea is continuing to broaden its economic foothold in the ever-expanding European Union. The Korean government will sign an additional protocol to Korea's existing free trade deal with the EU this evening to bring Croatia under the pact. Now, Seoul's Trade Ministry says the revision of the Korea-EU FTA is in light of Croatia joining the 28-nation trading bloc in July last year. Korea will provide almost all of the FTA's trade benefits to Croatia, with just a few exceptions in the service sector. Korea and the EU signed a tentative deal recognizing Croatia's inclusion last November. Now, as the dust continues to settle on the worst customer information leak in Korea's history, regulators say they will make it mandatory for credit card companies to send payment statements to customers via text message from the first half of this year. Well, the Financial Services Commission and the Financial Supervisory Service say the new system will allow customers to quickly cancel payments or receive compensation if their credit card is used by scammers. Around 70% of credit card users in Korea currently use the text alarm service. Now, in another measure, regulators say new customers will be directed to sign up through a secure tablet PC at financial institutions so that their information is directly stored in the company's database. The personal information of more than 20 million people in Korea was leaked back in January. Korea's largest automaker is making a push for a larger stake in the world market. Hyundai Motor is eyeing the United States in particular, where the company hopes its highly popular Sonata model will lead the way. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Hyundai Motor hopes the new Sonata will help it fight back a sizable global market share from its competitors, Toyota and Honda. The new Sonata model is the first from the Korean automaker since 2009. It features a hexagonal grille, longer wheelbase, and more ergonomic cushion design for seats. Fuel efficiency-wise, the new Sonata can run 12.1 kilometers per liter of gasoline, which is 0.2 kilometers more than the previous model. The price tag ranging between $21,000 and $28,000 depending on the model and engine size, makes it pricier than its predecessor. Hyundai says the new price reflects a significant improvement in technology and safety features.
You get a sense of the premium quality in every detail. It offers a thrilling driving experience not yet seen in other mid-sized cars. The new Sonata is safer and equipped with user-oriented technologies.
Since the Sonata model was first introduced in 1985, more than 6.8 million units have been sold, and it remains Hyundai's best-selling model along with the Elantra. The Korean automaker hopes the new Sonata will improve its fortunes. Hyundai Motor and its affiliate Kia Motors had to shell out around $400 million last year to settle lawsuits in the United States for overstating the fuel economy ratings of their vehicles. Chung Mong-gu, the head of Hyundai Kia Automotive Group, forecasts the weakest sale growth in 8 years for 2014, large part due to the appreciation of the Korean currency. Hyundai Motor says it plans to sell 228,000 new Sonatas this year, 63,000 in Korea and 165,000 overseas. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, if you've ever flown into Korea from a foreign country, you're probably no stranger to the nation's duty-free shops. But you may not be aware of the limits on the amount of goods you can actually buy tax-free. Well, currently, a Korean traveler can buy up to $400 in goods without paying taxes. But if you exceed that amount, you are taxed at 20%. And for goods categorized as luxury items, these include expensive watches and jewelry, you are subject to a 50% tax rate. That obviously doesn't sit well with consumers, but for the first time in 18 years, the Korean government is considering raising tax allowances for goods Korean citizens buy overseas. This is, in a bigger picture, part of the Park administration's deregulation drive. Now, for a closer look at this issue, let's bring in Dr. Kim Byung-ju, the head of KLMP Consulting and our regular commentator on this program. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
Now, I don't know if this is good news or not, but how can we put Korean consumers and their limit to duty-free shopping in terms of other nationals?
Yeah, I think that's a key question, and a lot of people are having that question in mind and not very happy about what the current system, how the current system operates. Actually, as you mentioned, $400 cap. You mentioned 18 years ago. That's measuring from 1996 when the limit was converted into US dollar. But the thing is, the origin was like 88. So 26 years ago, back in 1988, the cap was set at 300,000 won, which was at that time about $400. So if you trace back from all the way from 88, it's been 26 years. So a lot of people are unhappy about it. To answer your question, let's bring up some graphics here that will tell us a very interesting story. Of course, Japan is an outlier. I admit that. But if you compare with Japan, there's a big difference between where Korea stands and where Japan stands. The United States, for instance, well, their level is much lower than Japan, but still $800 is the cap. And where Korea stands right there is exactly what you're looking at. Third from the bottom in terms of the rank among the OECD member countries. Singapore seems to have extraordinarily low level there. I don't know how they manage it there. That's a separate question. And Mexico is after that, and Korea is number 3 in terms of the lowest levels of allowing the cap. And a lot of people are saying we have to go somewhere around the US level at this point, considering many different factors at this point. And of course, people are not saying we need to go up all the way to the Japan level. But as you can see on the screen quite graphically, where Korea stands seems to be a little bit outdated, to say the least.
No, I don't mean to say that I'm guilty of this, but $400, it can be quite a cap for those of us who travel overseas and come back.
Indeed.
And it's I don't know, it may be no wonder that violations are on the rise.
Indeed, the violations are on the rise big time. And we have prepared numbers for both the number of cases on one hand and then the size of the extra duty that's being imposed. I said it fines on the right-hand side, but I think I should have used extra duty that's imposed beyond the limits there. And some people may wonder why we had a lot more cases in 2012, but we have more extra duties on 2013. That probably means more expensive items purchased by foreign, the travelers going overseas among Koreans here. And what's happening, what you have to notice here is that, okay, basically what Koreans are doing is we have different choices. We can purchase these goods from the Korean domestic duty-free shops and have them counted under that 400 cap. But more, what the authorities are saying is Koreans, because if you do so, you can be detected by the authority through your credit card transactions and all that. More Koreans are going overseas with their cash and then purchase these goods from overseas outlets, and that they say is no good. And that's why there are increasing number of violations being detected, and they're suspecting those are actually what we are seeing what we were seeing on the right-hand side of the screen here. More people carrying their cash in the fear of detection, buying these goods from foreign department stores and different outlets, and then try to smuggle in and say, well, it's under 400 limit line, basically. So they're saying that's not a healthy one, and we need to do something about it. And they're saying this system, by having this 400 cap, is actually encouraging Koreans to lie to the authorities, and that's their argument for saying that this needs to be changed.
I think I might know the answer to this question, but do we see the majority of the Korean public in support of this the increase?
Are you saying that you belong to the majority?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
All right. But the view is overall $400 is quite unrealistic, because that was set back in, as I said, 26 years ago, depending on how you count it. And since then, they're saying the per capita GNP has increased 5 times. And the overall inflation and price level has doubled. So they're saying this $400 level for sure is unrealistic and needs to be changed. Indeed, there is a draft proposal for changing the law sitting in the National Assembly, and a lot of people are saying that could actually come in to raise the cap from 400 to 800. But we'll have to wait and see what happens at the at the lawmaking body here.
And I'm sure there are those who oppose to this.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Finance Ministry, according to the reports yesterday, were saying this is something we have to be careful about. This could be viewed as one way of deregulating, regulations, but they say this is benefiting only a few number of people, meaning 15% of Koreans who are traveling overseas. 85% they stay at home throughout the year. So they say this is something we have to be careful about. So indeed, even though lawmakers discuss this at the National Assembly, there could be considerable resistance to this.
All right, we'll have to wait and see how this one passes the National Assembly and become enacted.
Right.
Kim Myung-kil, thank you so much for today, and we will speak to you tomorrow.
Okay, we'll do.
And that's all from me at this hour. Thank you for watching. Join me again in less than 2 hours' time on Early Edition at 6.